Hi guys, I hope you guys are doing really well. My name is Yusha and today we are going to be talking about Koel. So, if you watched the last video on YouTube and you do not follow me on Instagram, yet again, shameless plug, please follow me. You probably don't know, but I've been doing a lot on Instagram, right? Hence this video got pushed back. I already knew that Koel was the brand that I wanted to talk about. It's just that just doing the research and making this video took a bit of time, and hence I think I can safely say that this series is gonna go on way past Eid, because I think that there are lots of brands that we should be talking about. We're gonna continue talking about them even after Eid has passed. So today we are going to be talking about a brand that has personally fascinated me for a very long time. In the Pink Tree video, I spoke a little bit about block printing and what kind of a technique it is, and I know that there are lots of people who are fascinated by it because recently the toxic nature of synthetic dyes and what the textile industry has done to the global environmental crisis, how it's added to that, it's led to a lot of people having a lot of questions about natural dyeing techniques and block printing, which is a technique that goes all the way back to the ancient Indus Valley civilization. According to some, it's even older than that. This really is a technique that has been around for a very long time, and it relies predominantly on what in Pakistan are called vegetable dyes, or internationally they're referred to as natural dyes. And essentially these are dyes that are created using plants and naturally occurring materials. A particular brand that really has become synonymous with block printing in Pakistan is Koel, and it's a very interesting story, not just of a specific brand but also of a woman who basically pioneered this conservation effort, also a city where she discovered this long forgotten tradition. We are going to be talking about Noorjehan Bilgrami. So, once upon a time, many years ago, in fact decades ago, Noorjehan Bilgrami was helping her husband, who was an architect, with a specific project, and she wanted to include block printing into this project somehow. So she, started looking for block printers within Karachi. One thing led to another, and she ended up at Bandar Road, and she discovered a market. Upon speaking to the artisans who were there and who were working on block printing, she realized that pre-partition this had been really a colony of artisans that all specialized in block printing, and there was a lot of demand for it. But obviously post-partition, that demand had dwindled. So she started talking to these artisans. One thing led to another. Before anybody could know what was going to happen, she had basically set up shop, and these artisans were working on creating block printed fabrics for her. In 1978, Noorjehan Bilgrami held her first exhibition. I didn't mention this before, but she's actually an artist, a textile designer, an author, a very creative person. So she held an exhibition in 1978. It was very successful. What she discovered is that once she put block printing back on the map, suddenly designers were interested in it because it does have a very unique look. If you've never seen block print before, as the name suggests, the technique relies on blocks which you use to print fabrics. There you go. Because of the way the motifs and the designs are laid out, it has a very unique look. You can kind of create certain patterns that are really interesting. Of course, this can be imitated using machines and more sort of synthetic alternatives, but there is a certain charm to having a block printed fabric. Noorjehan Bilgrami was able to encapsulate that in her now extremely well established brand called Koel. If you guys live in Karachi, you've probably already been to the Koel flagship store. It includes an exhibition space, a lot of jewelry, a cafe. It's really quite wonderful. It's one of my favorite places to visit every time I go to Karachi, because apart from a certain kind of ambiance which she has really cultivated throughout her brand, there's also something really special about the fabrics. You can definitely see the craftsmanship, you can see the quality, because a lot of these traditional crafts, as I mentioned in the last video, they take a long time, and because they are produced in small batches in a very slow way and produced over time, you also end up with a fabric that is going to last you for much longer, which you're not going to get in something that is mass produced and essentially a knockoff of some of the original. When you kind of go into the story of Noorjehan Bilgrami, it's very much about collaborating, trying to figure out how we can preserve the crafts of Pakistan in a way that economically empowers them, adds to the social welfare of Pakistan as a whole, but also mitigates environmental damage. Some of the things that Koel continues to do are pretty remarkable. I think their sort of aesthetic is really famous. It's a very revered and respected brand at this point in Pakistan. The typical kind of color palette that they go for, very earthy neutral tones, and also they do a lot of gold on white, which is, I would say, that's really one of their quintessential looks, and it's something that I really appreciate because it's a very simple way of achieving a very regal look. Apart from that, something that they do which I find very interesting is that they still work with artisans to produce ajrak. So the ajrak cloth, and I've said this before, is the de facto symbol of Sindhi people. Strangely though, there is such a thing as machine printed ajrak, also known as the devil. This is basically just replicating the look of the ajrak, but it doesn't really add anything in terms of social welfare. It doesn't really help the artisan communities. Ajrak making actually requires 21 steps. The artisans that work with Koel, they still do perform all of those. Their ajrak collection is really interesting. It also is not so very limited as the ajrak has been stereotyped into being. I mean, I could talk about the ajrak all day, but essentially their focus is very much on both the environmental and the social aspect. So we've spoken about the social aspect. I'm just going to touch on the environmental aspect. In many parts of the world, synthetic dyes have actually been causing a lot of pollution as far as water bodies and even drinking water is concerned, to the extent that entire communities no longer have access to drinking water. So techniques such as this that rely predominantly on natural dyes are seeing a lot of popularity. What I will just mention here is that the debate is very multifaceted. The argument being made by a lot of people is that just because natural dyes will not lead to contamination does not mean that they are necessarily a foolproof alternative. There's an article that I found in The Guardian which I think explains this really nicely. It was published in 2015, so it's about 5 years out of date, but it's still an interesting article. One of the kind of opinions mentioned there is that natural dyes rely on materials that need to be grown, so you need a lot of arable land. Also, you have to take into account that a lot of the water that is taken in by the textile industry actually goes to producing the cloth, and cotton, which is a preferred cloth for people who practice block printing, it does require a lot of water. My take on this whole thing is that I would like all of us to focus on the consumption aspect more so than dictating how production houses need to kind of overhaul their entire system. This is one of the reasons why I've been interviewing some pretty prominent names in Pakistani fashion for my Instagram lives, because I want to understand how we can best implement production practices which takes both the environmental and the social aspect into account. But there is also a consumption side to this, and as a consumer, I want to encourage a lot of people to look into ethical fashion brands in Pakistan and ethical fashion in Pakistan in general, so that we can support these businesses that have been doing this for a very long time and that have been really cognizant of their impact, not just on the environment that surrounds them, but also on the communities whose livelihoods really are in jeopardy. Ultimately, you also have to purchase less, like buy less, buy local, support smaller businesses, support brands that are very transparent about their process, that are really proud about their process, that will engage with you should you want to ask questions about how a garment is produced. It's about educating ourselves as customers as much as it is about holding brands accountable for what they're doing. So after that long dirge, let's talk about Koel. Their Eid collection has been available on their Facebook store for some time now. We were in the midst of lockdown when they announced this. Currently, because the lockdown in Pakistan is being eased, they are opening their flagship store and they have a lot of social distancing protocols in place. However, and this is just me, I would just order online. Stay home, stay safe, and shop local and purchase from businesses that you would like to support. I hope that you guys found this video informative. I think that Noorjehan Bilgrami is very much an icon and really someone who's really inspiring. I hope that her story inspired you. Initially, this was just supposed to be videos until Eid, but we're gonna continue doing these after Eid. I hope that you guys liked this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, share it across your social media, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please do click the bell notification so that you are notified every single time I upload a video, and do follow me across all my social media channels. I'd love to engage with you guys about this topic. It's something that I'm clearly passionate about. I will talk to you guys again really soon. Take care of yourselves.